This is the Royal Financial Investment Group. As always, this is your host, Prince Dykes here, coming to you guys another video where we're going to go over the debt to equity ratio. The debt to equity ratio. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. All of the good stuff, thumbs up, thumbs down. Any questions, issues, or concerns, leave me a comment below. But I don't have a lot of time. I definitely know you guys don't have a lot of time. So let's jump straight into it. So here we go. So debt to equity ratio. I hope I didn't say income earlier, but if I did, excuse me, debt to equity. So when you come into etrade, right? Like we're looking at Apple, you type in the word AAPL, any stock, you type in. You go over to this word fundamentals, right? You go to fundamentals and you see this little ratio here. Debt to equity on the financial strength. Earlier, I made a video over quick ratio. I'm going to do one on current, and we're going to go over the debt equity today. So when you're looking at this, a lot of people they don't know what they're looking at. They're like, oh, I heard this stock was great. I think it's great. Heard some good stuff on the news, but they never crack open the fundamentals and look at some of these key facts. E-Trade account is free. You can look straight at this. So what does this mean? What does this particular thing mean? Debt to equity, right? This pretty much tells you how much debt a company is using to grow itself. For example, everybody gets loans and business loans, money from cousins, friends, or whatever to grow their company, which is understandable. Now, if it actually turns around and, hey, I borrowed this money from this person, borrowed this money, it turned around and it increased my earnings, great. But a lot of time, when you borrow this money, it comes with a cost, and that cost is interest, right? And sometimes companies, they go out and borrow some money, they have to pay interest on this money, and then they get in over their head. The earnings are not pushing out like they expected, and then that's when it could be a bad thing. So if you have a high debt to equity ratio, it is usually said that you are a riskier company. Again, if you have a high debt to equity ratio, it usually like, hey, this could be a risky investment. Now you can't compare Apple to, let's say, General Electric, because they're in two different industries. A manufacturing industry usually has a high debt to equity ratio because it costs a lot of money to operate, the machines and personnel and stuff like that. They need to borrow larger sums of money versus a company like Apple where PCs are a little, computer chips are a little bit more inexpensive and cheap, so that so their credit may not need as much. So let's break it down. For prime example, let's say a company has $150,000 in assets. They cash, the vehicles and equipment, cars, whatever, right? Then let's say that company, it has $50,000 in liabilities, loans or whatever. Hey, I got $50,000 that I have in loans that I use to grow the company. Now, you take that $150,000 and you subtract it from the 50. You take the assets and you subtract the liabilities. Like we said in this scenario, the person has $150,000 in assets and $50,000 in liability, which we said was loans. You subtract those two. What do you come up with? Man, you guys are smart. You come up with $100,000, right? That is the equity. Now what happens is they take the liability, which is $50,000, and they put that over the equity, which is $100,000, and you come up with a number of 0.5. Right? That means that this person has 50 cents worth of debt to every $1 of equity, which is pretty good. That means that person is not highly leveraged, but that means that person debt to income ratio is pretty low, which means that it's a lower risk, right? Now, let's look at the other way around. Let's say if a company had $100,000, $120,000 in assets, $100,000 in liability, and then they got $20,000 in equity, right? You put their liability, which is $100,000, over their equity, which is $20,000. That means that they have a debt to income ratio of 5, right? $20,000 divided by 100,000. That's it, right? 100,000 divided by 20,000 is 5. So you have a debt income ratio of 5. That's pretty high. We just said earlier the other one had 0.5. So a bank will look at this and say this is a risky investment. They're using a lot of credit to further their growth. Now, it's not a bad thing that you have a high debt to income ratio. This is just a tool that you can use to evaluate companies, right? You can look at a company and say, man, they're using, their growth. They have high earnings. I mean, they're going to be riskier. Usually, if you have a high debt to equity ratio, you're going to be risky because you're losing a lot of credit because we know we use credit if you don't have the money on hand, and you use debt to further your growth, and you're using debt to further your earnings, which means you're going to be a little bit more volatile or whatever, right? Because it may work, it may not work. But hopefully that didn't confuse you guys. Hope that was definitely on the point. Hopefully this adds a tool to your tool bag to where you can look at debt to equity ratio, know what it is, and how to evaluate other companies. And you look at companies and you compare by the industry. And Apple, for example, is in the technology industry and it's in the computer equipment industry. This is how you're going to compare them. So, hope that didn't confuse you guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. All of the good stuff. Until the next video, you guys know what to do. Peace.